My guest today is Jerome Mage, and he is the designer and owner of what I consider the greatest eyewear company in the last 30 years easily. Jacques Marie Mage is an eyewear company that I couldn't even pronounce when I first found it. I was like, what is this? Jacques, you know, I immediately fell in love with this brand. I picked it up. I could tell right away this is way beyond anything that anybody else is doing. I've been looking for something like this for most of my life. The shapes, the quality, the craftsmanship, the colors, everything about this company knocked me out. Yes, I am an eyewear nerd. I hate using that word nerd because when I was growing up, nerd is, I mean, it's more like I'm addicted to great stuff. That is really what it's about. I am absolutely addicted to fine craftsmanship and design, and I'm always looking for the best. I don't know what it is. It's something in me, and I'm glad I have it. I know a lot of people don't give a shit about stuff, but the people that do, those are the people that email me and go, wow, this guy's stuff is great. It was incredible to talk to this man. His story is unbelievable. And holy shit, I love it. We go all over the board. We talk eyewear, motorcycles, cars, life, America, Europe. What else we talk? I mean, oh man, we go all over the board. Anyway, I'm going to tell you how to look at his stuff right now. So while you're listening to the episode, you will understand and not be like, what are they talking about? It's Jacques Marie Mage, and it's JACQUESMARIEMAGE. That is the Instagram account. I recommend you go there and you check it out while we're talking about the eyewear. And I really appreciate you giving this a spin because I think it's going to knock you out, this man's story. Let's get into it with Jerome Mage. Yeah, you listen to the John Mayer ones?
Yes, really like them very much.
I just saw a picture of him wearing the Dylan, the collab.
Yes, I think he purchased several frames like last week or something like that.
Yeah. I love that man. Yeah. It's so funny. He is a lot like you to me. When I look at your Instagram, I've never met you, but immediately I go, this guy gets it. I can go anywhere with you. Of course, I'm here to talk about eyewear.
Yes.
But there's so much more to you than eyewear, and that immediately makes me excited. You love motorcycles.
Correct.
Right. You're into design.
Correct.
You love watches.
Yes.
It's insane. Eyeglasses, of course.
Yes.
Cars.
Yes.
Mustangs.
Yes.
Old Shelby stuff.
Yes.
I'm looking at you and I'm like, look, I got goosebumps, dude, because I'm like, fuck, I've been wanting to talk to you for a year. I've been hounding you.
Yes, you have indeed.
Even a little longer.
Yes, maybe it's like a little bit over a year, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. We lost track of time with COVID. I don't even know what year we're in.
Introduce yourself.
Well, my name is Jerome Mage, or Mage in America, or Maggie. There's been, or Mage. There's all sort of ways to pronounce it. They're all right, but in French it's Mage. And I would say the best way to describe me, I'm just a product designer. You know, I'm a designer. I design. That's my job. That's my passion, and that's what I do every day, pretty much of my life.
I'll tell you how I come across you. I've been wearing sunglasses my entire life. I often say that sunglasses should be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yes, they should.
They're as much rock and roll as any song or musician, guitar, or anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's right up there with the Les Paul or the Stratocaster. Sunglasses, leather pants, boots. And I've been wearing eyewear, specific really like stuff that I would seek out early on. When you look at people that wore great eyewear, of course, like Bob Dylan, you get into Roy Orbison, all these people that it was rock and roll, Jim Morrison. And so I've been wearing, different frames my whole life. Started out with Varney. That was like the first good frame I bought. In like 82, I believe it was when I discovered, wow, Varney's. Look at this. It was $100 for a frame. And I was like, what? $100. Mm-hmm. And then I got into Persols. Mm-hmm. And then later on, just started diving deeper and deeper and deeper. Bono starts wearing these fly shades. And then I'm wearing Reviews and different brands like that. And then, of course, Arnett comes out, which wasn't high-end or anything, but holy shit did they hit with the fashion, with the pancake one and the other cat eye one. So I basically always looking for a great frame, and I think the last people that made a great frame for me was Dita in the mid-2000s. I was wearing the Grandmaster 2 and the Rambler, and after that I got a Tom Brown, and I wore it for 10 years, which Dita made for them. And after that, it really seemed like no one was pushing eyewear. It was just kind of blah. The same company was making them for everybody. Tom Ford, all those, And then one day I walk into Fred Siegel, I guess it was a couple years ago now, and I see this brand. And I'm like, what is this? Immediately I see the Dylan and the Hopper in Rover Green. Mm-hmm. I go, I got to have these. And then I dive down the rabbit hole on you. And it's been like that ever since. It's amazing because right away I was like, wow, this guy gets it. This is so next level. Finally, somebody that built a frame that would be like a Ducati Desmo or something,
Yeah. I think when we arrived, we did something very different that was not in the market, that was not available, and that had not been seen for, I would say, maybe 20 years. The last frames that were really well built, might have been the mid 90s, with thicker acetate, that the all, a little bit closer to what we're doing, with that sort of like vintage and very traditional way of building the frame. So I think when we arrived in 2015, we really, our proposition was very, very different from everything else that was on the market. On top of it, at that time, sunglasses were very thin, thin acetate, thin metal, kind of that minimal look. And me, I'm more of a maximalist. I'm not a minimalist. So that added on top of it to the sort of the change of typography, the change of product that we were offering, or we started to offer 5 years ago.
Now, what was your obsession with sunglasses, and how did you get into it? Because I know that you were a designer for Burton, right? Mm-hmm. Burton snowboards and kind of extreme sports and stuff. And one day, do you just say, hey, man, I can't find a good pair of sunglasses?
No. It was not. It's not that simple, and that's not really. I have a long-standing affair with eyewear. When I was finishing my product design school in Paris, I was a kid who was not really fitting in the French mold, and really wanted to get out of Europe. I was a little bit struggling with a mentality in Europe, and I wanted to do something else. And I grew up snowboarding and racing motocross,
Wow.
So I grew up really in that action sport world, like many kids in the 90s. And really wanted to come and work in the action sport industry, which really is based and still based, or whatever is left of now, not much in California. You have a little bit in Australia, but it was mostly California companies. And I came to do some internships in the US. And also, I should say something before that, is in product design school, I was never a kid that was going to design a vacuum cleaner or a blow dryer. That was not, or electrical plug. Not that it's bad, it's not a judgment call. It was just not me. I was not in the industrial side of it, although I was studying it. I was not into neither furniture. Furniture for me seems extremely hard, although one of my best friends is one of the best furniture designer in the world those days, Mr. Patrick Norgay. But I could not see past the work of guys like Charles Eames or Sarah Renette. I could not see how I could improve on the work of great master, postmodern great master of the 1960s, 1970s. I was like, wow, it seems so hard. Those guys have done it in a way that is so good. But I had a passion for fashion, I was never into making the clothing, but somehow I found it that accessories, were the perfect blend of product design and fashion, right? Whether it was shoes, whether it was a belt, whether it was watches, whether it was eyewear. I love the fact that it was a hard product. There was volume, there was texture, there was different materials. But at the same time, it was very fashion driven. And at the same time, they were very personal. I love a watch is like jewelry, and eyewear goes on your face. A shoes says a lot about you, about your personality, who you hang out with, and I love that aspect. So I always was very drawn, very much so, to accessories in general, and especially eyewear and shoes. I always felt like, wow, that's kind of the cornerstone of how you dress. You know what I mean? Obviously, there's clothing, but they really accentuates everything. A good pair of eyewear, a good pair of shoes. And it's funny you mentioned Vuarnet, because my brother at the time, who was 15 in the late 80s, or around the time of Top Gun, showed up with a pair of Vuarnet, and it was the same thing in France. It cost so much money. And it was my first introduction to really nice sunglasses. And then after, obviously, the Oakley thing happened, all over the world with Eyeshade, and I was a huge Oakley fan.
Which ones did you like? The ones where you could snap on different lenses, or the frog skins?
I had a little bit of everything. I had the Eyeshade, I had Sub-Zeros, I had M-frames. I bought them all. I remember in France, it was around 500 French francs at the time, which would be close to $200.
Yeah.
In the late 80s. It's extremely expensive. So through that, I developed a really strong love and affinity with eyewear. And basically, it's a mid 90s. I'm 20 years old, and I'm looking to do internships in Europe, and I'm snowboarding a lot. And as you mentioned, then companies like Arnett and Dragon are starting to happen. And I'm in the US, and I'm doing my internship, and I'm working at a motocross company called JT Racing. Is one of the very legendary motocross gear company from the 70s and the early 80s. And somehow there's mention that someone knows Greg Arnett. And I'm like, oh, great. I'm doing product design in Paris. Can you hook me up for my next internship? I had 6 months internship to go to Arnett. And that person at the time was working at No Fear, which was also exploding. It went from zero to $120 million in 5 years. It was the highest, fastest growing company in the US. They had the front page on USA Today. So you remember, everyone was wearing those damn T-shirts.
Of course.
Whether you liked them or not. But it was a huge success story. And that person was working there, and I don't know, somehow I had a discussion with the president, Mark Simo of No Fear, and said like, whoa, wait, don't send that kid to Arnett. We're starting our own eyewear company. So he was starting a new company as an investor, which was called, I mean, the name of the company was Spy.
Oh, yeah.
So somehow I got recruited to, go quickly back to France, finish my my FIDIs, my year of design, graduate, and I came straight back to start Spy Optic.
Wow.
I did work briefly with Greg Arnett on one or two freelance projects, but really that's how I started. That's how I moved to California, to San Diego, to basically be the creative director for Spy.
So you're brand new. You're a kid, and you're obsessed with sunglasses like me. And so what was your idea? Was it going to be next level quality or just some kind of extreme sport glasses?
It was very extreme sport. I mean, as you said, at the time, probably the coolest glasses in the world were Arnett.
Of course.
Right? I mean, in fashion, you had companies like, who was really, I mean, you had like LA Works at the time. Oliver People was started to be really good. Donna Karan in terms of licensing, because I think Bosch & Lomb was doing the Donna Karan frame, were absolutely fantastic, thick acetate frames. And of course, you had Matsuda.
Oh, Matsuda.
And Matsuda was doing Jean-Paul Gaultier license. So those were like the heavy player. But still, I think Arnett was still cooler to wear than all those frames, than all those other brands.
That was definitely a different style, too.
Yeah, it was.
Like if I wanted like a JFK type of frame, I'd go Matsuda. Mm-hmm. But if I wanted something to wear out at like, Coachella or something, I'm wearing an Arnett,
Correct. And so Spy was pretty much an action sport company. So obviously there was a certain price point, there was a certain way to build the frame. They were wrap around, that was the style of the time. And, I was not the owner. I was not obviously I was an important part of what Spy became, and it grew to be a $50 million company. But I was not really making so many decisions in terms of quality, price point, and, it was a true action sport company. So, it had a certain price, it had a certain way of being made and manufactured. But that's how I started. So my first job was a job in the eyewear industry, not the regular, it was independent, it was an independent company, but more on that side, on the skate, surf, snow, motocross side, which was really at that point my true passion in life. I was a bit different because I was coming from Paris, because I also love fashion. So I already had a little bit of a different perspective or different eyes than some of the other member of my action sport family. But that's how I started. And, it went from there. Then after I opened my design studio in the early 2000s, and I worked for many eyewear companies, from low end, to action sport, to high end. I always worked as a freelance guy, as a designer. And at some point, there was a couple of turn of events that made me realize that it was time for me to try my hand at doing my own company, around 2012, 13. So it came to that point, the market, everything looked the same, every frame looked the same, very thin, very kind of a rounder lens shape, very minimal at the time. You would see kind of the same brand, people were wearing kind of the same frame in the same color. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do my own project, Also, I think as a designer at the time, I felt a little bit frustrated by that race to, it's not a race to there was like it all became about the bottom line. Every company was always chasing the bottom line.
Well, I had seen that story on 60 Minutes where they said about 90% of the glasses were all made in that one factory in like Switzerland or something, where they just made like Ray-Ban. One company owned them all.
Yeah, Luxorica is a very powerful company that probably owns, a large part of the market. I think it's Not 90% though, but
it was something crazy.
Yeah.
Where basically, most people go into a sunglass hut or the mall and they look at like 5 different brands and then they pick one and they go, but they're probably just all the same with just different names.
Yeah, if you'd go in Sunglass Hut, there's a good chance that they're all owned by Luxorica, and most of them are made in maybe 2 or 3 different factories in China. Some that say made in Italy are not made in Italy, they're stamped made in Italy. So the frames are made in China, then they're flown to Italy. You polish them, you cut the lens, you can still put made in Italy. So most likely it's all Chinese-made product. Most likely it's all owned by one company. Correct.
Right.
Yes.
I just wanted to clear this up because whenever I have somebody on the show and something costs money, I like to break down why the hell it costs this money. Because people are always like, what? Fuck that. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And then they'll go and they'll buy, over a period of 5 years, 5 pairs of $200 ones that fall apart every year, and then they get a new pair. And so what they don't understand is with watches, boots, denim, glasses, even cars, not everything's made the same. So I just get my glasses at the truck stop. Well, this isn't what that's about,
No, I mean, you can get your glasses at the truck stop, but there's a reason they cost $5, and a pair of glasses that costs $500, there's also a reason why it's costing $500. Right. It simply starts with how much you pay your worker, because the craftsmen that we work with in Japan, when I started my project, we were just talking about the bottom line. Always have bigger profit, make more money. Always go in a dirtier, cheaper factory with. I travel a lot as a product designer. I'd go to China, I'd see people working on the floor, and it became not cool. And you see like the marketing director or the CEO flying business, while people in China can barely afford a meal. So that's why it's cheap, because you're taking advantage of other people. That's the reason. Because when you start going and doing really things in Italy or in Japan, the idea is a person who works in the craftsman who makes the glasses can have a similar life than you. He can take his kids to the cinema. He can go on vacation. He can afford to buy a home. Well, that person then needs to be paid at a certain level. And that is reflected, in the price of the glasses. So that's where it starts. And then I haven't even touched on how it's made, the quality of the materials, the QC process, et cetera, and that's why it ends up with a certain cost. But it just, your basic cost at the factory level is just not the same. So obviously that really impacts the final price.
When you sit down to start your brand, and there was a time where a high-end glasses came out of Italy. That was the place. And then somewhere along the line, it switched to Japan. Mm-hmm. So when you sit down, are you figuring out, okay, I want the best. Why did it get better in Japan? Was the acetate and everything there done old school and all of this? I'm trying to figure out how you figure out how to make a frame to the next level. Because as I read your book in the store, these glasses are insane. It's like 18 months spun in a wood barrel with chips, then taken out, hand polished, put back into a barrel for another 25 days. Then, this stuff is like way beyond I've ever even heard of. So how do you even know to take it to this next level? And is that why you picked Japan?
Yeah. First of all, I have a great admiration and love for Japan. So when I started the project, a big part of the project was I wanted to go to Japan.
Yeah, I love Japan.
I wanted to visit Japan 2 times, 3 times. Before, pre-COVID, I was there every 90 days. So the idea was like, number one, I want to go to Japan. I want to spend time in Japan. I want to work with Japanese people, with Japanese craftsmen. Number two, I wanted not only to build high-end glasses, but I wanted to build them in the most traditional possible way. The way frames were built in the 60s, the 70s. When you talk to people who've been wearing frames for a long time, who own like a sunglass or optical store for like 40 or 50 years, they'll tell you, wow, you know, up until the 80s, the frames were made a certain way. And then it changed. It got cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And they're always romanticized about some Purcell frames from the late 60s and how they felt and how it was made and how you cannot find that anymore.
8-barrel hinges.
Yes.
Thick acetate.
Yeah.
Incredible lenses.
Mm-hmm.
You know, nothing that falls apart from like sunblock. It doesn't melt into the arm. You know, I mean, I've been wearing Purcell's vintage ones for most of my life, and they're mind-boggling. The old 60s and 70s ones. They're insane.
They are. And the only place where that traditional craftsmanship was left was Japan. Because Japan, you know, the couple of places we work with, they're either second or third generation. So that's a starting point. So the places, the atelier have either been started, you know, pre-World War II or just after World War II.
Wow.
And it's 2, 3, 4 generations of same families that runs that place. So,
And what sunglass brands were they making back then? Were they making for...
basically, the Japanese frames started to arrive in the 90s.
Right.
You know, in the US and in Europe. Before, it was just local market. So basically, even licensing like Yves Saint Laurent, you can find Yves Saint Laurent frames from the 80s are absolutely insane that were made in Japan only for the Japanese market. So I think up until the late 80s, early 90s, there was not a lot of Japanese frame going out of Japan.
Yeah, I never saw them. It was always
Exactly.
Italy. Farnay was France.
Yep.
And then it was Italy. You had to get your frame from Italy. As soon as you knew it was from Italy, you go, this is a great frame. And then all of a sudden, you're right, mid-90s, it was like, oh, no, it's Japan. I was like,
Yep.
Japan? Like, when? But it makes sense. Japan is absolutely my favorite place on the planet. And I've been there many times. The denim is insane. The boot, anything they do is insane. I mean, like the real McCoys make this Buko jacket. I absolutely worship this jacket. Everything in Japan, the way they make this stuff is crazy.
Yeah, it's a very different mentality. First of all, they have a tendency to never replace or buy new machine. So the couple of machine, I mean, although a lot of the production of our glasses is handmade, you still need machine, right? To cut the frame, to polish the frame, to inject the wire core. They take pride that a machine that they bought in 1955 to inject the wire core, they still use it. It's the most exciting things for them. Where if you go to Italy, if you go and look at handcrafted in Italy, you know, if you go to a factory that still make great eyewear in Italy, but all the machines are new. You know, everything is like maybe 5 years old, 10
They got
years
rid
old
of
max.
the history.
They changed. They went to like new, faster, cutting edge machine. But it seems it's the same and you gain in productivity. It seems it's cutting the frame in a more precise way. It seems you're improving the process. But in reality, you lose the subtle quality of those older machines that even though they're machine are more man operated, are doing little tiny mistakes that you will not be able to read with your eyes, right? You will never be able to tell it's maybe the temple is slightly different. But still, your brain is able to recognize that tiny mistakes that you can't quite see means that it's been touched by a human hand. And that's what gives the frame that sort of specific warmth and quality. So it's sometimes like a slight imperfection is actually the search for perfection has to go through a slight imperfection that you're not able to see, but you're able to read as not machine made. not made with a mold, made by hand. So that was one thing with the Japanese, is like they still build frames the way they were built in the 60s. That was really what I was interested in.
How do you find the guys when you're like, I want these guys in Japan? How do you find them? And did you interview a few different people and then go, these are the guys?
I knew who to work with because I've been making glasses since 95, since I was 20 years old. And I came in with $4,000 in my pocket to California. So sold my bike, and that was it. It was $4,000, and I came in at one suitcase and a $4,000 and my visa. And so from 95 to 2015, working with different companies at different price points, I knew a lot of people. Okay, so also that was a reason I was going to do eyewear, not anything else, because I had, a vast network of people that were willing to help, because I've told the brand, hey, you should work with that factory, you should work with that guy. So I was able to tap in my network, and I knew where to go. And I also had a pretty clear vision and idea of what I was trying to achieve, But you were talking about denim. You could talk about loom for a sweatshirt. The Japanese have bought all the old machine, all the old American machines that Levi's had in the 50s and the 60s. They're all in Japan, right? I mean, that's how they work. But to give you an idea, it's the same with eyewear. The amount of handwork that goes in Japanese factory is insane. The frame is constantly touched by hand, and I think you can read that warmth, you can read that human quality in a Jacques Marie Mage frame, and that was very important for me. And that was the only way to get it, because every other part of the world, things have changed drastically, and people, the minute there's a new machine, the minute there's a new process, you know what, screw that old way. That's not good. And for me, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to return to the proper way to manufacture eyewear. That was my calling. I'm a huge vintage collector, and all the frames I like were from the 60s or 70s. That was it. There was nothing I really liked from the 90s. There's nothing I really liked from the 2000s. So I was like, hey, I want to start producing eyewear in a similar manner. That was my calling. That was my love. That was my passion, And then at the end of the day, I'm just at the service of my glasses, right? Just there's Stanley Kubrick was saying he's at the service of his movie. That's what I wanted to do, and also that was, I think, the Japanese philosophy. You're at the service of your work. You're never more important than the product, the results of the team effort. And that Japanese philosophy also was very important for me, just like that constant search of improving, upon techniques, but without changing the technique. You're not buying a new machine. You're not changing the way you're polishing the frame. You're just trying to do it better by constantly working hard at it. And that was also my theory. So I think there was also like kind of a philosophical calling for me, because I think the Japanese have that culture of going beyond yourself, elevating yourself to a level that, you transcend craftsmanship, you transcend design just by that self-sacrifice, that hard work on daily basis. And it's a very small increment. It's not like a big jump, but it's just a decision to be fully immersed and dedicated to your project. So I think philosophically speaking, and also on a product, craftsmanship, traditionally speaking, everything was aligned between myself and Japan, and there was no other way and no other people and no other culture I could work with to achieve what I wanted to do.
Can you explain to people, most people think the glasses are just plastic. Mm-hmm. Now, there's a while where they were nylon, but correct? Mm-hmm. But can you explain to people what acetate, like what the frames are made of and why they're so superior?
Well, I mean, there's two, if we want to call frames to simplify things, call them plastic frames.
Right.
There's two ways to do it. There's a way to do it like it's been done probably since I would say maybe the first cellulose frames were like in the 20s, maybe 1920s, something like that. And before that, you had tortoise. They would use real tortoise shell.
Really?
Right? Yes. So
Holy
now it's
smokes.
Yeah. Now you cannot use tortoise shell. There's a couple of ateliers, some in France that can still use tortoise shell because they always use tortoise shell and they're using their own dead stock.
Gotcha.
Right? So they can still produce tortoise shell.
I had no idea that that's where the tortoise shell color comes from. This is insane. I never even knew. It was actually tortoise shell that they would cut and make frames out of.
Yes.
This is crazy.
So those are like your quote unquote first plastic frames. I think maybe the late 19th century, you know. And then you had acetate frames. So cellulose acetate is a cotton-based material blend with acetone, right? And it creates that substrate that is called cellulose acetate that has been, I think, used since the 1950s, 1960s. And the sheet of acetate are flat, and you need to cut them out like cookies, bend them, then you got to cut out the volumes by hand, you got to tumble them, polish them. It's a very difficult process because basically you start with a complete flat sheet of acetate. There's no volume. It's got to be bent. It's got to be completely built from scratch. By hand. And then obviously in the 70s, they started to inject plastic sunglasses.
Molds.
So, yes. So here you create a mold and you just inject it. You open the mold. The glasses is ready. You cut lenses. You screen print a name inside and you're done, right? So I would say that most of the glasses now are probably plastic injected, right? And it can be nylon, it can be polycarbonate, depending if it's safety glasses, sport glasses, but most of the sunglasses now are injected. Now, acetate, cellulose acetate, which is kind of a traditional way to make glasses, there's still some frames that are produced, like ours, cut out and carved out of cellulose acetate. It's becoming more and more rare. There's less and less factories or ateliers or craftsmen that are doing it, that maybe are willing to do it, and also, less demand. So people move on with injection or metal that can be molded. There's also now a couple of companies that are starting to print
3D
plastic
printing?
eyewear, yes.
Yeah.
So you'll see more of that. But that's, to give you an idea, that's really the big difference. Obviously, when you open the mold, the frame is done. So the cost, cost of an injecting frame can be as low as $7.
Wow.
Can be very cheap.
Yeah.
Once you make the mold. The mold is obviously as a cost, but then you buy your plastic, you injected it, in 2 minutes it cools off, it comes out, cut lenses, you do some cleaning, you can put a logo, and it's a very cheap and very fast way to manufacture that does not require really any people. Apart from picking up the frame, and basically at that point, the hands that work in the factory are just moving parts. At no point a worker is working or crafting or modifying or polishing the frame. Everything is machine made. The people in the factory just take the frame out of the mold, put it in the bath to clean it, take it out of the bath, put it on the machine to be printed, take it out. You know what I mean? So they do not really interact with the frame.
There'll be a robot hand to do that later.
Yes, there will be. Yeah. And there's still some in some places to gain time and go faster. And us, we're on the opposite of the spectrum. You know what I mean? Like everything is hand done.
Yeah.
The machine or the things where you use operated machine is almost in support of the worker who works with his hand. So it's we almost have the reverse process where the machine are more to do just like the cutting, or to do like a simple insertion of an hinge or a wire core, and everything else is done by hand.
how do you do the colors? Now, your frames are so known for the colors. You got Seed, you got Hickory, you got Rover, you got Army Green, you've got the maroon one. I forget what it's. I mean, all these colors, and they're absolutely beautiful, man. Like, you look at a Hickory frame, the way the sun hits it from the side when you're outside, sometimes the frame looks black. Oh no, it's root beer. Oh wait, I mean, these colors are insane. How do you do colors on it? Is the acetate dyed, or what's going on there?
So when I started the project, one of the first thing I did is work with very thick material. For me, acetate is something that the thicker it is, the more beautiful it is, because it reveals the true inner beauty of the material. And we started with that. We started with 10 millimeter acetate frame. I think at the time, I don't even think people were doing 8. I think most of the frames were made with 4 or 6 millimeter.
Wow.
So
Double.
right away, our cost in materials double. And I remember the first time I went in Japan, I told them I wanted to make the frame out of 10 millimeter material for the front frames. They looked at me like I was crazy, you know. The guys that work with me now, they thought there was 100% of chance I was going to fail. They're like, oh, he's a nice kid, nice guy, really good designer, but we'll do a couple of 100 frames and we'll never see him again. So because I was doing exactly the opposite of where the market was, you know, the complete opposite. So obviously the thickness of the materials really accentuate the color depth that you can find in cellulose acetate. Also, myself being a product designer and having studied sculpture in Paris, I'm a sculptor. You know, I'm all about volumes. I'm all about carving out. All the frames at the time were cut flat. You would cut out the shape, they would curve them, put some temples, done. If you look at a pair of Jacques Marie Mage, there's not one flat volume. There's bubbles, there's cuts, there's angles. Yes. So all this volume work reveals really the beauty of the material, because like you said, the surfaces, the ways they reflect the light, create those different light and shadows and create that gradation that you were just talking about. And on top of it, what you do is create a difference of thickness of materials, then you get those same thing, light areas, dark areas, and that's what really I think helps those colors shining. But it's always been my passion. I'm coming from if I could have been a sculptor, if I could have done sculpture as a career, that's really what I wanted to do. That was like really my true maybe calling in terms of artistic passion. But I just couldn't figure out how to make money. My dad, he was a big surgeon, one of the best in the world. I was like, he's already so worried that I was going in an artistic field. I was like, I can't show up home and tell him I'm going to be a sculptor. He's going to have a heart attack. So I had to do product design, graphic design, interior design, architecture, something where at least there was a field to apply my artistic, passion. And when you work with volume like that, that really helps showcasing and I think making color shine. So that's one thing about our frames. Now, in terms of colors, it's something we work on a lot. I think it's a bit of a French trait. I think French people, we have a very monochromatic palette. So we're very good at looking at different tints and shades. And I think that's what you appreciate. It's a very French quality in terms of design. And also it's a lot of work. Basically, by default, because we were doing 10 millimeter thickness acetate and 5 millimeter for the temple, everything had to be custom made for us. So when I went to see Takiron, who's a legendary, iconic cellulose acetate maker in Japan.
What's his name?
Takiron.
Is that the company?
Yeah, that's
Wow.
a company that makes our acetate in Japan.
Wow.
When I went to see them, there was no purpose on picking through their regular catalog of colors, because anyway, everything was custom made for us, because no one was using 10 millimeter front acetate and 5mm for the temple. It was completely custom made. So that was one thing. It allows us to create our own color, our own variations, to be a little bit more subtle on the tint. And also, every year I take a trip to the Tachiron headquarters, to their library of vintage acetate, and I spend hours digging in their archive. I think I'm the only guy who does that. I go and bug them, and I dig in the archive for days.
Oh, God, that must be amazing.
I look at acetate produced in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s, in the 2000s, and I'm always looking for something. It's hard to explain, colors. It's either right or wrong, right? We were like just talking about that idea. You Rover, which was a green, and no one could sell green glasses. No, like if you ask an optician what's the worst color for a pair of sunglasses, they'll say green. But if you pick the right green, then it's a home run, and that's what happened. It's just a matter of picking the right color. Any color can be good. It's just the right tint, the right shade, with the right material, in the right frame. It's all about putting it all together. The
green is what grabbed me. I walked in, I see the Rover, Dylan, and Hopper, and immediately I was like, oh, this guy gets me. Mm-hmm. Oh, my God. Because when I wear them on stage, they look black. And then if I just turn to the right or something and the spotlight hits them, you immediately go, oh, those aren't black. And then you don't know what. It's just mind-boggling how beautiful they are. I see them in photos on my face, and I'm like, God, these things are insane.
Yes, they're beautiful to look at, for sure. The depth of coloring, the quality of the color, and Tachiron is the best acetate maker in the world. They produce in Japan. They dry the acetate the longest. So you have a very dry material. So that means a little bit harder, so you can work volume better. And they're Japanese. They're crazy about the small details. They love what I love, what you love. They're all about the details. They're all about that obsession to just make it right. So, it's been a great partnership. And I know they love working with us, and I love working with those guys. And it's been also colors. Frame colors have been been a great part of our success, for sure.
You have done something that I have never seen in the business that makes me crazy and makes me love you. And that is, all frames are limited edition, and there's new frames all the time. I have never seen anybody do this in my life. Most companies have about 6 shapes. That's it. They roll it for years. I follow your Instagram, and I follow everything about your company, and all of a sudden, here's a new frame coming out. We don't know anything about what? Here's another frame? 75 made. Wait, here's another frame, 250 made. And in the last couple of years, I don't know how many you've released, but it's just a home run as far as a business. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like, wow, I got to have this one. And if you didn't get it, the resale on these things is insane.
Correct.
So they sell for $675, let's say, but you didn't get that one. You see it on eBay for $1,200. It's like a lot like a limited edition Rolex or Patek or AP. It's wild. Did you have that in mind when you started it?
Well, I had in mind, I don't know if I had the watch business as a model in mind, but I for sure could clearly see that luxury has become a bit suspect by just overproducing, overdoing the same thing. And me, I was always one of those kids when everyone started to have something, I was done with it. You know what I mean? So if everyone had a pair of checkered Vans, I was like, okay, well, I need to buy a pair of plain red. Yeah. Or, I was always that kid who I like to find things first, or I like to have the even if, let's say, everyone was wearing Vans, I'd like to have the color that no one was wearing.
I'm the same way, man.
Yeah.
I wanted the stuff first. I wanted to be the guy that people would ask, what's the best? I would know. They'd call me. My friends still call me now. They're like, what's the best eyewear out there? I'm like, this. They don't even ask why. They know that I've done all the damn rabbit hole research for them. But I'm the same way. Also, I wanted to have something that other people didn't have. It was that mall mentality of growing up in the 80s, 90s, where everybody just went to the mall and they looked the same. I didn't want to look the same. And I looked at rock stars and I'd be like, where did Jimmy Page get those dragon pants? Where did Bowie get those glasses? Run DMC, what are those glasses? You know, constantly I would search it out. And there was no internet back then to find it. You had to find it. And you couldn't find it. Usually you could if you went to LA or New York.
Yes,
you
correct.
could find it. The guy that made the glasses for Elvis on Sunset Strip. These kind of people, you know, they're out there. But you couldn't find it. But I would find it. And I love that about you, you know?
Yeah, and it was one thing. And I was like, well, you know, I probably, and also it was getting to a time where we talked about overproduction. We talked about cheap fashion, and I didn't want to go down that rabbit hole. So I was like, I got to find a way where I will not be encouraged to do that. So, and also, I mean, my dad is a huge Porsche enthusiast. Oh. And at the time, he had a GT3, and he would go and to the Nürburgring, and he would do all the circuit with his Porsche. And I was telling him about my project, and one day he's like, Jerome, you know what? Because he knew I was going to do like kind of more of a luxury, expensive project. It was like a lot of those people that have money, the thing they hate is a guy next to them to have the same car. You know, when I go to those Porsche things, wow. If one of those guys showed up and the guy is the same Porsche, and he goes completely crazy. And he's like, you should really do everything limited. Don't even bother making regular stuff. Nobody cares anymore. It's gone. Those guys are not interested in that. And, I'm one of those kids who always listen to my dad. I know now the trend is like not to listen to your parents, but I was like, wow, my dad couldn't be more right. You know, I already had that in my mind of doing part of the collection, limited edition. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do like what my dad told me. I'm just going to skip the damn thing. Everything is going to be limited. So you can imagine when I started, people were like, well, you can't scale it. You're going to have to redo colors, redo design all the time. I mean, it's madness. And how about production? We're going to have to stop and go. It's insane. And I was like, I know. If you want to work with or for Jacques Marie Mage, everything is more difficult. But I feel that through difficulty, people rise above what they're capable of. So in many ways, it helped us. Number one, because I didn't want to do just sunglasses. I wanted to do like a collectible object, something that people would keep for a long time, pass on to their kids, resell it, become something of value as a vintage object in the future. Number two, I felt it brought the best out of all of us. It forced me to be always designing. It forces me to always be thinking. It forces our craftsmen, our atelier, people working on production to be even better than normally they are. And number three, it also keeps us from going insane and producing 10,000 of black Dylan, me buying 5 black Porsche, starting to get fat, get into drugs, and lose my mind. You know, I'm kind of in a poor forever kind of a position. So I love all about it. I love everything it brings to the consumer, to the people like you who really value that they have something that they're not going to see on another person. I value the fact that it gives you that real idea that it's a collectible, something special. And all our frames start conversation. Everywhere I go in Paris, people are like, oh, people stop me, they ask me this. I was like, you know what? If I've done that, then I'm successful. A pair of Jacques Marie Mage is something to start a conversation around. I'm very happy about that. And then number three, I love what he does about the company in terms of keeping the company sane. You know, in those insane moments. And that's very important to me also. So that's a little bit of the backstory.
Well, your glasses, you're a motorcycle rider, so am I. Your glasses really, really hit a place in my heart the same way Ruby helmets did when they came out.
Yep.
Ruby helmets were so beyond any helmet on the planet. Everything about it, the material, the packaging, the styling, everything. It was so next level. And your glasses completely remind me of Ruby helmets as far as like the packaging with the glasses are complete pieces of art too. You get this beautiful box with these cards, this great wipe cloth, this leather case. That alone is amazing. And then you put on the frame, you know what I'm saying? Was the packaging also a big deal to you? I mean, obviously it was, but
everything was to me. When I and it's funny you mentioned Ruby because he's my good friend, another Jerome, Jerome Coste, also from Paris, who has a very similar background than mine. Grew up racing, motocross, BMX, snowboarding. He loved fashion. Went into more a commercial endeavor. Same thing, to not drive his dad crazy, and then sort of like started his helmet company because he's just huge passion for motorcycles. But for me, everything was, when I started it, it was very simple. When I started, it was, I'm just going to do the best I can at everything that is attached to the project. I had no idea how much the frame was going to cost. I had no cost in mind. I had no idea how much the packaging was going to cost. I was just like, hey, you know what? I'm just going to do what every other company I work with my entire life doesn't do. Because every company I worked for 25 years as a freelance designer in a huge design studio with 13 employees at some point. It was always about, again, bottom line, cutting corners. Oh, fuck that. You know what? Let's make $5 more here. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do what I really believe in, which is doing the best you can and making the best at everything that you touch on a given project. And that's what I did. So the packaging for me is not just a packaging. It tells a story, obviously it tells a story. Like you said, it has a card that tells a full inspiration behind each frame, which I think is pretty rare, which I don't think any other company in the world do that. So you get the stories, the mystique. You can embody the persona or the time that frame represent. That's people love that. People tell me, oh, Jerome, we don't buy the glasses, we buy the mystique. I buy the story. I feel like McQueen for a second, or I feel like it's a late 60s, or I can hear Studio 54 in my ears when I put those glasses on. First of all, they tell that story. So the packaging is very important. And then the packaging itself also tells the story about the brand. We're a very Franco-American brand. That's my dual identity, although it's a bit of a trend to do that. You know what I mean? Everyone is like, oh, I'm half this and I'm half that. So it is my story, though, indeed, whether it's trendy or not. And the packaging is a little bit more French. I have a strong passion for the First and Second Empire, and so it's French in the 19th century, which I think was France at the time was at the top of the world, whether it was military, politically, artistically. It was the first, was leading the world at the time. And the packaging has that more French sophistication from the late 19th century. The silk paper, the silver foil, the marble handmade paper inside. The way things come together and opens up on top of each other. So if you don't get the packaging, you don't get the full story. You don't get that sort of, because the glasses are more, maybe a little bit more on the American side. They're kind of like postmodern object. They rock and roll. They're very West Coast, but with a French sophistication in the design. But the packaging is really part of the design. It's part of the story. So I never see it as a packaging. I just see it, hey, look at it, open it, study it. It's telling you an important part of the story of the voyage of where that frame is coming from. And then inside you have all the information to really understand your sunglasses. It's just not a sunglasses again. It's an invitation to curiosity. You know, people are not curious these days. We live in a very flat world. And I wanted to do the opposite. I was like, hey, I want people to be curious again. I want people not only to wear a pair of sunglasses, but maybe read about something that happened in history in the 50s, in the 60s, or in the 1880, or about a poet. You know, nobody reads poetry. I love poetry. It's like, hey, I want people to discover who Guillaume Apollinaire is again, you know? I want them to be curious and read about the poetry and how was Paris at the time. And when they wear it, get transported somewhere else. So I had a little bit of a different way to come to packaging than just design or a box. It was just a vehicle to tell the full story about the brand and the object, the collectible object that you were buying.
My first introduction, of course, I said to your frames was the Dylan and the Hopper. What kind of research did you do to realize this was the actual kind of shape that Hopper wore on Easy Rider? I did a movie with Dennis, and I got to spend some time with him before he passed. And I think Dennis Hopper is the greatest, you know, top 3 of all time actor and influence and everything. How did you find that this was the Dylan from that tour frame or the Hopper? How did you get that going? Did you own those frames?
No. I never own any of those frames. I don't think anyone owns any of those frames. I've read online a couple of theory about exactly what was the frame that Bob or Dennis was wearing, but I don't think anyone knows, actually. I can't, and I know vintage eyewear very well, but I don't think anyone has traced down.
You think they're just drugstore glasses?
Who knows? You know, who knows? I mean, you're like in the 60s.
Right.
You know, who knows? He was a small producer somewhere who made that frame. Who knows if it was custom made for them? It's just impossible. At the time Bob wears that frame, he's really touring Europe, right? In 1965 when he's going electric.
Yep.
And you know, there's that beautiful documentary on that old tour. It's absolutely stunning. It gives me goosebumps when I think about it. Like when he plays in London and people are calling him Judas. What a moment. What a moment in history. What a moment in music. What a... wow, incredible spectacle, the styles, the look, the way he plays. And when he hears the people saying Judas, he's like, turns to the band and said, play louder. I mean, more electric. Insane. I mean, insane.
I love it.
It's just insane, you know? And so I love the two personalities, obviously, Bob Dylan and Dennis. The first frame was the one that Bob was wearing, and really what I did is spend hours and hours collecting every picture I could find of him wearing that frame.
Wow.
Whether it's on the internet, whether it's on vintage magazine, vintage book, new books, photography of Bob. And then it's like a puzzle. You put it together and you try to figure out how that frame kind of looked like. And then I think I've redrawn the frame maybe 15 or 20 times. So I would draw the frame and I would be, it's too close. It needs to be a little bit more different because it needs to be, you know, kind of a modern interpretation. Or then I was like, it's too different. No, I can't see the frame that Bob was wearing. And it's just a process, you know, a labor of love. And what I try to is not replicate the frame, but what I try to is emulate the essence, the spirit. I don't want the same frame because that frame now would probably not be completely adequate because proportions change, style it's subtle. Huh? We're not talking about big changes, but I want that person when it wears a Dylan frame to have that same amazingly cool charismatic vibe as Bob had in 1965. I want, when the people wear the Taos upper, I want you to have that look from Easy Rider, from Dennis in Easy Rider. So it's more than the frame. You know, it's really arriving at a point where you feel you capture the inner personality, the mystique of that moment in time, and how do you propel it in modernity? You know what I mean? Like really, the frame, the Dylan or the Taos is meant to be an object out of time. You know, the idea, the exercise is like you don't know if they were designed in the 60s, designed 2 years ago, or if they will be designed 10 years from now.
Yeah, that's true, because it doesn't look retro or, you know, when you put it on, it just looks unique. Like, wow, what's that frame? I mean, you know, the famous photo shoots with Brad Pitt wearing them in GQ. When I see it, I go, well, that frame, I mean, that should just be the Brad Pitt now. It's just so fucking perfect on this guy.
Yeah.
And it's just, these shapes are the shapes I'm always looking for that are just a little outside of the box. My buddy Fletch, who loves your frames also, I showed him a frame a couple days ago, and it was by a different company because he's looking for a frame and he loves your frames. I'm like, just buy one of these frames, dude. But he looked at this other company and he said, yeah, not unique enough. And that was that was perfect.
When I studied again, to go back to that Franco-American story, I felt most of the European companies doing eyewear were just wacky. You know, I mean, Europeans have a tendency to over-design. But I felt most American companies were just flat boring. It's the same thing, man. It was the same Wayfarer or the same frame I've seen a million times, and a little bit more this, a little bit more that. And I was like, there's got to be a way where you can make glasses that are wearable, but that are unique, you know? Something where I'm like, wow, Dean, those are really, really rad glasses, but without the glasses taking over your face where I don't even know who you are anymore, and all I see is the glasses. So our point of view is we are designing on that thin line that exists in between, you know, wearable and fashion. You just kind of find that line where it's unique, but still something you want to wear every day. And I think that anything that is special is that at the end of the day, things need to be used. You know what I mean? When I don't own a Shelby anymore, but now when I own my Shelby, and I was lucky enough to do a project with Carol and know Carol a little bit, I drove my Shelby every day. The reason I got to work with Carol Shelby and I got to do that project with Carol is because I damn showed up in my Shelby GT500 at his headquarters. And I don't think he knew any kid who were my age who drove a damn Shelby every day. And I was like, hey, I got a Shelby. I'm not keeping it
I'm not
in
opposed.
the garage. I want to sit down in that car, and every day I want to start the motor in the morning and feel 500 horsepower under my butt. You know what I mean? Firing.
Yeah.
So it's the same with my glasses. Obviously, people collect them. But still, at the end of the day, the best use of them is to wear them. So they have to be wearable. If I do something totally wacky, then it defeats the purpose. It becomes a concept car.
Yeah.
And the people I admire, like Carol Shelby, the way they sold cars is by racing them, by using them. You know what I mean? So it's a bit the same for me. That's kind of a cultural thing. You know, you got to be able to wear them. You got to be able to have them on your face and not look like a complete fool with them. So that's a point.
I think the Fellini so far for me is your high point, but I'm a square type of glass guy, a Roy Orbison kind of Persol, a little mix with the 60s Mafia boss kind of look, Run DMC, all the kind of, but you really nailed it with this shape because it's not the standard shape, but it is a shape that I love, you know?
Yeah, because it's a little bit more of a V shape.
Right.
You know, the Fellini is absolutely amazing. And I think we have the Walker inspired by, you know, Scott Walker.
Yeah.
Who's a big inspiration for David Bowie and so many others. He was wearing frames in the late 60s that are absolutely amazing. Those frames are coming out in September. I think that might top the Fellini.
Wow.
The Walker. So, but yeah,
I think I saw it here. Did I see?
Yeah, it's you got it. No, it's not there.
This here though.
Yeah. Okay.
Woo!
That's a. I mean, I can't talk about those.
Right.
I'm working on a lot of Japanese inspired frame.
Holy shit! I saw this when I walked in, and I was like, wow.
Those are gonna be spectacular. But I think you'll love the Walker.
Okay.
The Fellini is very impressive, and also in terms of manufacturing, the volume work, the softness on the frame. It's very easy to make frames that are a little bit more rectangular, but to get that softness, you can only do it by hand. That means hours and hours of work, and that means really, really skilled craftsmen that have done that for decades. So that's when you hold the Fellini, you it's a piece of art. It's just not just a frame. I mean, it's something. It's special, And I think you can tell the physicality, the presence, the sensuality of the volumes, the softness of the acetate, the beauty of the polishing. It's something truly special. The Fellini, yeah. I mean, I'm very happy, and it's funny because it's a design I made like 3 years ago, and every season I wanted to do it, and I kept pushing it back, and I finally found the place where to make it. It's done on a very specific place, and only that atelier in Japan can make that frame. And
really?
It took me a little bit longer to get to it because I knew that the way the volume had to be softened and manufactured and done and crafted by hand had to be very special, so you could really touch and feel the true beauty of the design. So it took a little while, but I'm very, very happy the way it came out.
I love the new series, The Last Frontier.
Yes.
Sold out immediately.
Yes.
I was born and raised in Yosemite.
Yes.
So I'm like, wait a minute. I need to collab with this man and do the Del Rey Yosemite line.
Yosemite line.
The half dome.
Yeah.
The half dome, dude.
The half dome, yeah.
So it's funny because I relate to you in so many ways. Mm-hmm. You're into the city and the rock and roll, but you're also like to get away. You were recently in Wyoming, and the beauty of the big open spaces of America that are still out there are just incredible. But the packaging and the actual frame of The Last Frontier is so insane to me. Mm-hmm. The case is like an Indian blanket with leather. The frame has a T-bird on it that just reminds me of the old, T-bird with the booze, Thunderbird booze, and then the whole thing is beautiful, but then it also feels like this wide open, this project,
Yeah, it is. The first time I came to America, I was 17 years old, and at the time I did a West Coast trip. So I did almost all the national parks. I've never been to the U.S. before. Obviously, there's, a mythology about the American West that every kid, I think, worldwide is fascinated by it and wish he could come here and see it with his own eyes. But what I really felt in love with was not the culture, not the big cities, not how busy America was, not... it was really the open space. It was really nature, It was Zion. It was the Grand Canyon. It was all those places, and I was like, wow, I've never seen places like that. And to me, America is such a special land, and I'm always surprised by most of my friends that live in California that take vacation in Europe. And they think I'm crazy because I'm a Euro and I take all my vacation in America. You know what I mean?
I tell them that all the time. I traveled with the Stones for years and stuff.
Yep.
And they're like, dude, you've been to like Europe. And I'm like, dude, have you ever gone to like Zion?
Yep.
Have you ever gone to Yellowstone? Have you gone to Yosemite? Like, fuck flying somewhere else. Just drive.
You would need an entire life to vacation to all the beautiful places that America can offer. And people forget about that. And hopefully through that period, we took a road trip and we've seen a lot more American families traveling. And I was in Yellowstone, and I think it's pushing people to rediscover their own country, which is fantastic, But yeah, and you can go on, and Glacier Park and this and that. It's such a fantastic place. And me, I'm especially in love with the West. And we haven't even talked about the Southwest, because that project is really that first collection. There will be other collection. Perhaps they might not always be inspired by the Southwest, but that one was. And I was in Santa Fe, New Mexico last June, and incredible. You can spend days there. Days,
Taos,
weeks.
Where were you? Taos, Santa Fe?
Yeah, Taos, Santa Fe. It's absolutely spectacular. I went to the Allen Hauser Museum, who's a native sculpture, again, with my love for sculpture. What a magical place. There's so many magical places there, like the clouds, the landscapes, the colors is so deeply inspiring, and that's a starting point of that project. Is really the Southwest.
It always reminds me of that scene in Stars Born where Christopherson and Streisand get their place out there in New Mexico somewhere, and they're just in their own world in that kind of Spanish cool style bungalow thing they have. And I'm like, God, I could get into that.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I was growing up, you wanted to go to the big city. That's where you could find people that you could find things that were different. You could find things that were only available there. You could have different thinking, concepts, artistic movements. But now it seems it's reversed.
Yeah,
I have to go outside of the cities to find that. To find things, wow, I haven't seen that, or well, that's interesting, because it seems the cities have become, again, very flat.
Generic.
Generic. Everyone dress the same, fix the same, eat the same, and, it's become very stale. I would say it's been like now, 10 years ago I started feeling that, but the last 5 years, it's really come true where I feel like I've got to go outside the big cities to really find true raw inspiration, the rawness, the when you touch on raw emotion, when you can really think through a concept all the way without being diluted, without being, you have to get out of the city for really thinking. And thinking is very important in my job, because at the end of the day, design, obviously, when I draw, I use my hands, but thinking allows me to know when to start and stop the line. If I draw a line, design is all about also decision. That decision is unconscious thinking, but that comes from, thinking consciously about it before. So it's become a great source of inspiration. I obviously love Wyoming. Wyoming, at least twice a year. I love going to Montana. I love going to New Mexico. I love Arizona. There's so many beautiful states.
What parts of Arizona you like? Sedona, stuff like that?
Yes. There's just so many beautiful places on the West Coast. And the Rockies. Utah has beautiful places. Colorado. It's such a special land, special place. And like you said, when you go to Yellowstone, it's pretty much untouched. So having it's not only a pleasure to go there, but I feel it's also what's a word? A privilege, a great privilege to experience what the land was before we were there, and what an amazing thing to conserve and to protect. So we work with Yellowstone National Park, obviously work with Yellowstone Forever. We've done a full collaboration, but we have an ongoing collaboration where we contribute part of the money we make to Yellowstone, and we also work with specifically associations that work and protect or study wolves. Those wolves were reintroduced in Yellowstone in 1995, and it's something very close to my heart because I took a wolf trip a year and a half before starting JMM. I went to see the wolves during the winter in Yellowstone, and I clearly understood that with the return of the wolves in Yellowstone, the ecosystem was complete. And I clearly understood that without that full ecosystem, things are broken, right?
Right.
The wolves returned, but weirdly, certain type of trout or grass returned because either the elk, there was too many elks.
Right.
So, or because there was too many elks, it impacted beavers, and there was not enough beavers, and then that trout was not there because the way the beavers built. I mean, it's like that all very complex.
I was reading that because
ecosystem.
of you. And once you start reading that, you're like, this is incredible.
It's incredible. And it became a metaphor for my project. It became like, wow, if I make that project too much about me, about just us being successful at all costs, we talked about that. Again, it will not work. I want to make sure the opticians I work with, that project is a success for them. I want to make sure for you, when you buy a pair of JMM, your breath is taken away. I want to make sure the workers, the craftsmen in Japan, makes a really good living. I need to make sure the ecosystem is robust, solid, and the project contribute to everyone, obviously in different ways. You know what I mean? It can be very minimal or it can be very maximal, but the reintroduction of the wolf, that animal became really, wow, that's the core of what the company needs to be. So that's why it was associated with a project from the get-go.
I raced BMX as a kid, big time, from, I guess, 76, 77 to 80. 76 to 80, right at the golden era of when it's really hitting. Road Torkers,
yes,
SCs, GJS, PK Ripper, Pedal Power. I had a zillion different bikes. Panda. You raced also. Were you racing? You were racing in France?
I was racing in France. That's pretty decent. I raced the European Championship. Almost qualified for the World Championship that year, but I ended on the last double at the international race in Tours. I was in the top 4. You had to qualify for the semifinal at the European Championship, and you were on the French team. And I'll always remember, I'm in 4th, and there's just a little double and the starting line. And I turned back, and I was like, oh, I'm done. I can't believe I'm going to qualify. And I must have slowed down too much, and I clipped the second, went over the bar. And wow, what a disappointment. But yeah, I love BMX, man. I love BMX.
Talk about design. Yeah. I mean, these were dads that were making these frames in their garages, Cook Brothers, GJ. These are dads that were making this because there was no, Redline. You got Schwinn. And people are making their bikes into BMX bikes. Then kind of Redline
comes. Gary Turner. I mean, anything.
G-Boy, FMF. I mean, these BMX bikes are fucking pieces of art, man.
And they're still amazing. I think BMX from the mid-70s to the mid-80s, right? It's like a 10-year period. Me, I'm more like in the early 80s to mid-80s. They're still, if you think about BMX Action or Freestyler magazine, some of the most influential, coolest magazine ever made across the board. You know what I mean? Maybe as good as Vogue Paris when Karen Warfield was there. The quality of the magazine, the layout, the ads,
the photos,
as good. Like it's a golden time, a golden era. I collect BMX. I have like maybe 10 to 15 of them.
What do you got?
I have mostly. I'm a big Grail fan, and Grail was like world champion, multi-time, national champion from like I would say from like 81, 82, he started battling Stu Thompson all the ways to 86 or 87. Those were the golden years for Greg. So he had a company called GHP, Greg Hill Product, that manufactured BMX from 83 to 85 for 2 years. And I could never afford them or have them. So I have a bunch of GHP.
Yeah.
I have a couple of Patterson. I was a big
Patterson. Oh, man.
Yeah, beautiful. The colors, the NorCal vibe, right?
Oh, dude. Man, the Patterson family. Come on.
That's right. And I have, of course, I have a Hutch.
Hutch.
Of course.
That was East Coast.
Yeah.
It was weird because West Coast wasn't down with Hutch.
No, maybe not.
It
You're
was
right.
Cook Brothers was the high end for West Coast, and Hutch was East Coast. And it's pretty wild. What else you got?
I have a Skyway and a couple of Harrows.
Oh, yeah.
I have a SE. I mean,
SE.
you know, I've got the kind of the classics, you know. I mean, obviously, a lot of, like the Patterson or the GHP, that was the one I like to build the most. They were either unavailable in France, or I mean, no dad could afford them. They were like buying a Rolls Royce. Only maybe
money.
I'm sure a couple of kids in Paris got it, but I didn't get one. So
What were you riding?
at the time, you know, I had a Raleigh. So the British brand was my first BMX. And then after that, I got my big brother bike, you know. So my big brother would buy a GT.
Yeah.
So when he's done riding the GT, I would get the GTs. And he would buy a Skyway, and then I would get a Skyway. I never got first choice, man.
Oh, my God.
It's okay. It doesn't matter. It was great. It just worked out like that.
A couple more questions, then I'll get out of here because I can't tell you how much I've loved this. Wow, I did see you had a 64 Galaxy in your Instagram. I had two 64 Galaxies. What an underrated car that is. 64 Galaxy with the Cruise-O-Matic tranny and all that.
Beautiful car.
Beautiful car.
Beautiful.
And talk about just design and ornate and just the lines of that car. You know, it looks like a spaceship almost, you know, just the way it goes back. I used to call it a cigar because it'd go back to the round tail light that looked like a cigar burning, you know?
Yeah. And that car is special because in a way it mirrors a lot of what we do with Jacques Marie Mage, you know? I like decoration. I like details. You just, the trick is to know how much of it you need and when to stop. And I think that car is a great balance like that, you know? It has all the details, but it's not too much. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Oh, it is.
So you can see the shape, you can see the car as a whole, but then there's those little details that are so cool, but not too many. It's a beautiful, beautiful car. So I think that's also, you know, a bit of the way we design frames here at JMM.
It's so underrated, that car. What? How did the collabs come with the celebrities? Were they wearing them and then you reached out, or because you have some of the people that just never ever do this kind of stuff? Brad Pitt, Keanu Reeves, these kind of people that you're like, wow, man, these are like. How did that happen? Spike Lee?
We never really reach out. We you know, I started. I came out of a very difficult divorce. I was pretty broke, you know. Although I was very successful, I was wiped out, man. So I didn't have the money to have a big PR firm or a crazy marketing team. So we invested everything in product. That was our only chance. You know, there's no way I was going to fight big companies or successful companies with marketing or with PR or with gifting or with promoting. So it's all been the product, you know. And for example, like what happened with Brad is one of the best stylists in the world, Mr. George Cortina, is a huge fan of Jacques Marie Mage.
Awesome.
Huge. And he suddenly decided that every shoot he would do for GQ, guys would only wear JMM because for him there's JMM and there's nothing. You know? So it's been always like that. We found those amazing supporters of the company that have helped us going places. So, but most of it has been completely 100% organic. I mean, talking about Jeff Goldblum.
Oh my God! Well, he's known for frames.
Yes.
I always looked at what frame he would wear for years. I mean, you know, all the time because I knew that he would wear a primo frame, and he was a lot like me, where he was just loved frames.
Yeah. So Jeff, he found JMM. All those guys, you know, what I mean, they bought their first JMM frames. They came to us. We never went and really seek anybody. It's always been very very natural and very organic as a process.
I love it, man. I can't thank you enough, and I won't say anything here.
No,
but
please don't.
I'm looking at
all the new designs coming out for the next 2 years.
New designs, and I'm just like, oh no, you know what I mean? It's just unbelievable. If I look at all these frames up here, they're just, it's outrageous, man. And I can't thank you enough for talking to me, because
my pleasure.
I love everything about you, and you're one of those people where I'm like, this guy gets it. And he's one of the few people I could sit down and talk with. And, you know, like I could talk to somebody about frames and they just think you're an idiot, or a pair of boots, or denim, or anything with full passion. And people just go, you know. And when I see people like you, you know, like I said at the top of the show, John Mayer, these kind of people, I'm like, I always compare it to the bumblebee in the Blind Melon video.
Yes.
Running around Earth, nobody gets me, and then one day you see a bunch of other bumblebees, you get it.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I hope to design boots at some point.
Oh, wow.
That might be a possibility. So
wow.
I'll update you, and if that dream happens.
This is my boy right here, Brian the Bootmaker, 24 years old cobbler. Makes.
I love boots.
I love boots too, dude. Right?
Yeah. It's a great thing. Yeah, it's a great thing. It's a great thing for men and women, by the way.
Yeah.
Everyone looks great in boots. So well, it was a great pleasure, and thank you for having me, and for everyone, all the people out there that love JMM or that are collecting or buying several frames. I want to thank them for the support, because the support is encourage us to continue, but it's also supporting craftsmen. It's supporting craftsmanship staying alive. It's not very easy. As you know, there's a lot of pressure in this world. A lot of pressure to go faster, cheaper, quicker, easier. So it's purchasing a pair of JMM is a true act of passion. So I want to thank you, everyone who helps us staying in business and thriving, especially in that environment. So thank you to everyone, all our fans.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank
Instagram is Jacques Marie Mage.
Yes.
And then yours is Jerome.
Mine is Jerome Jacques Marie Mage. So Jerome in front of Jacques Marie Mage.
What a great day to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dean.
All right, guys. See you later.